What's been on the screen? What have I been watching over the past week or so, ladies and gents? Well, I am going to start off with a movie called Baby Driver. Baby Driver, this is a Edgar Wright directed movie, director of the Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End. I mean, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz are two of my favourite comedies. I think they're great. So he kind of like was set in that sort of world of directing comedies, and now he's went into this other one. And this is a movie, obviously, quite a few years old now. I think it was about, was it like 2015 maybe, or maybe earlier. Or, I'm pretty sure it was around that. I've not got the date written down, wrote down here. So, Baby Driver is a heist movie. It tells the story, the point of view of this young guy called Baby, who is this like really great getaway driver, and he is then sort of like put in loads of different crews. By Kevin Spacey's character in this, he's like has different crews for different crime jobs, like robbing banks, robbing shops, and stuff like this. And he's always the getaway driver for every single mission on these sort of crime activities. And like I said, he's a great driver, but you see this story develop throughout this movie, that he doesn't necessarily want that life for himself, Baby, and he's trying to kind of like get out of that life of crime. And it tells the story throughout the movie of him trying to get out of that, without kind of going too deep into spoilers. But you got John Hammond there, Kevin Spacey. I didn't catch the young guy's name who plays Baby, but I've not seen him in a lot of other movies. I don't think I've seen him in anything else, this guy. What can I say, though, about this movie? It is totally different from what Edgar Wright has directed before, and from like Shaun of the Dead. If you've watched their movies, it's very, very different feel, but you do get a sense of his directing style. He's very quick-paced directing style. I feel at the top a lot of the times with his directing and the quick, he's just got like a certain like energy to his directing. I feel like Edgar Wright when you watch them movies. But I really like this movie. I thought there's some really great. I mean, from early on in the movie, some really great car chases. That's a gimme in this movie. There's some really good car chases throughout the movie. What I did like, though, I like the story of this young guy who's trying to get out of crime, and he's trying to build a better life for himself, but he kind of, he's always getting pulled back into these sort of things, and even though he doesn't want to get into it, he wants to get out. What is really interesting, though, is with this story, and what I'd heard, over the years about this movie is, and I think I heard this when they were actually releasing it, that it was going to be like a movie set to a soundtrack. It's just going to be like one loop of a soundtrack, all this movie, and it kind of is a bit like that. And I didn't really understand what they meant by it. I thought it was just like going to be music all the way through the movie, and you do get that. So basically, the guy has tinnitus, and tinnitus is like this ear condition where if you've had some sort of damage to the eardrum, you can get like loud squeaking noises. I actually used to get it myself. Thankfully, I don't have it anymore, but I had it for quite a few years from playing in bands. Like when I was back in college, I used to play in bands, and we used to like rehearse, and we used to have the music blasting, and I get tinnitus. And tinnitus for me, I used to get for me, a lot of it was like a loud like drum in my ear, and I would get this like loud. It felt like a heartbeat. It was so weird, a heartbeat in my ear. It would just like every so often it would just do this loud beat, and sometimes I would get like the screeching, and I do get that occasionally. Sometimes now, just every so often, a bit of a like high pitched in my ear. But when I used to really get it, it was so unbearable having like that beat in my ear. It was horrible. So this guy has that, and what he does in this movie, because it tells a story, something happened to him early on in his life, and then he suffers ear problems. So he has iPods, and he just listens to his headphones, even when he's driving. He's always got music on, either in the car or on his headphones. And throughout this story, you've got him just listening to different songs on his iPod, and that is a soundtrack for the movie. And then you see him like in certain bits where the dialogue hits in, where he takes the headphones out, and then he's doing a bit of dialogue and explaining things, and then you hear like the music like dim down in the scenes, which I think is really well done. But yeah, some really great songs in this, a lot of like soul music. Queen, there's a Queen song in there, such a deep cut of a Queen song. I think it's off, might have been off was it Sheer Heart Attack, that album? I think that was the album. I think it's the album that's got Killer Queen on. I forget what the song was, but it's at the very near the end of the movie. They reference it early on with John Hamm's character, and then they play this song in another car sort of like action scene later on in the movie. But yeah, I think I really enjoyed this. I've been doing my list this year. Media Collector Madness, he's got me onto doing a list of what I'm watching this year, and what I've actually added to that as well on my phone. I'm putting every new movie I've watched, and now I don't know if I mentioned this in a week or in another video. I was doing it just like doing, you get the emojis where you get like the thumbs up. I've now changed it, so I'm going to do it like a free thumbs up system. One, if you're not like massively keen on it. Two, if it's, middle of the road. And three, if it's superb. Kind of like, well, no, I suppose like, and thumbs down is just like completely just disgusted in the movie. Never want to watch it again. I've so far only got Baby Driver is the only one with 2 thumbs up. So I think, think of it like out of a 3 score. If it's 2 thumbs up, it must be pretty decent. If it's a 3, it's got to be spectacular. So I'm saving them 3s. But I really, really did like this movie. I thought it was really good. A great soundtrack, really good story throughout. And what I liked as well, it kind of felt like there was like an end point of the movie for me near the end of the film. It felt like it come to its conclusion, but then it had something a bit extra in there. It felt like it was like, a good filmmaker, and I think Edgar Wright is a very good filmmaker, where you have that big build, and then you have that build, and you think you've seen the end of it, and then it has like another build, another ending, another sort of like finality to it, where you're just like, wow, that was the blow off this needed. The ending, what he just showed us was good, but then he give us just something a bit more bite that really whet the appetite of me as a cinema goer, as a movie goer watching this at home. I really enjoyed it. So Baby Driver, well worth checking out if you've not got around to watching this one like myself. Next, I'm going to move on to the most recent episode of The Last of Us. I actually caught up with the last 2 episodes this past week, but this Last of Us episode 3, I will kind of get into spoilers with it, so if you've not watched it yet, I know it's a recent show, so some people may have not watched it yet. So spoilers for this episode ahead, ladies and gents. But yes, this episode star is... It kind of doesn't revolve so much around Ellie and Joel, the 2 survivors in this world in The Last of Us, on the journey to getting Ellie to a certain location. This one tells the story of Nick Offerman, who a lot of people would know from Parks and Recreation. He plays a character called Bill, who is this survivalist type character. And then you've got this other character played by an actor called Murray Bartlett. And I must say, I've not seen Murray Bartlett in anything, or I can't remember seeing him in anything. So I don't know if he's a known actor. He plays a character called Frank. So you've got Frank and Bill in there. And basically, we see early on in, obviously, this world in The Last of Us, we see, 2003 when the world collapses. And we see this really, really unique story of this 20-year story, where it ends with Ellie and Joel visiting Bill's house, Bill and Frank's house, which they spoke about in like episode 2, and they find Bill and Frank are no longer alive because they do like they both end their lives together. But we see this really interesting love story build in kind of like a zombie apocalypse. I call it a zombie apocalypse because I suppose a monster apocalypse is probably a better word for this show, because I know they're not zombies. I keep on saying it's like a zombie show. This monster world. So we see this love story between these 2 men take place with Bill and Frank. And Bill is this survivalist character, and he's got all the guns. He's got like an underground base. And when all the military are kind of like getting rid of people and killing people, he's hiding out in his house, and then he sets up like this big like battleground in his neighborhood where he sets up these big fences. And then we see maybe like a couple of years into his story in his location he's in, a man falls into one of his traps. This man is Frank, and then he takes him in, gives him a meal, and then they end up falling in love. They have a relationship over this long time period. We see them growing old together, growing this relationship over the years, the struggles they have, them meeting Tess and Joel along the way and becoming acquaintances with them. And then it leads into obviously the end where I think Frank has some. I think he has he has some. They don't. I don't think they actually say what he has, but he's in the wheelchair, and he has some sort of illness, and he wants to end his life, and then they decide together they're going to end their life. But it's such a gripping episode. Honestly, I thought it was great. I thought Nick Offerman as well. I really like him in Parks and Rec, but that's a comedy show. But he moves to this. But I think it's always that thing. Comedy actors always tend to do really well in drama roles, and he is, superb in this. Absolutely superb. Not a role I would have, thought he would have been good in this role, because it's completely different to Parks and Recreation. But it is just an absolute solid episode of TV, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it was just as well. You see. I like these episodes where you've got like these survivalists that are setting up the camps, and then you've got, you see throughout, like, people are attacking the home and stuff, and they're trying to defend the home. And I think it's just such a great episode. And the story as well was great, because it was very much a character episode of these two characters, growing old together, falling in love, and, also bringing Bill out of his shell a bit, because it's this guy who's a survivalist. He really coming out of his shell. And Frank was a bit more like extroverted, where he, trying to get Bill out of his shell. And I thought it was a really good story, and he wanted him to, link up with Joel and Tess, and great episode. I'm kind of disappointed in the way that we're not going to see them characters again as well, because they were really good characters. But for what we got a masterpiece of an episode, and for that, I'm really happy that we got a really solid episode of The Last of Us, and I'm looking forward to another episode now. It's so frustrating that we got to wait for another week, but yeah, it'll come around Monday, so that'll be round before you know it. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Let's get on to the last thing I've watched this week. The last movie I watched was Puss in Boots. I was going to say Puss and Boots. I always thought it was Puss and Boots, but it's Puss in Boots. It's the spin-off movie of the Shrek character Puss in Boots, played by Antonio Banderas. It is the little cat who's like the Mask of Zorro cat in that series, and he had a spin-off movie. Now, this was back in 2011, this movie came out, and it did all right money then. And I only wanted to watch this because there is a new one, and I think it's hit like the US recently, over the past few weeks, but it has had its UK release just yesterday, February the 3rd. And it's the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and apparently they're using a lot of the animation style of the Spider-Man Spider-Verse animation movie, that sort of style of animation for that new movie. But I thought in the meantime, let's give this a movie a watch. I like the Shrek movies. I think the last couple ones were a bit too much, and I'd have to rewatch them to kind of like see if I feel different about them. But I thought, the first two were pretty solid movies. This one is a really fun movie. It's the story is basically Puss is, I think it's set before Shrek, from what I gather of this story. He is this like sort of vigilante. The military in his town he was brought up in are after him because Humpty Dumpty, who is like kind of like his orphan brother, got him sort of like done for a crime he didn't do, and then they're kind of like arch nemesis, but they become friends throughout the story again because they were friends as children. But the story is Puss in Boots and Humpty Dumpty are trying to get these magical beans off Jack and Jill to go into the, go up the big beanstalk to get the giant golden eggs from this giant sort of bird. And that's the story. So they got to get these beans, magic beans, from the villains of the piece, Jack and Jill. But overall, you've got some really fun characters in there. It's very much, from what if you enjoyed the Shrek universe of movies, this is a movie you will definitely enjoy. But I really watched. I watched it this morning. I give it a thumbs up from me. Definitely, I enjoyed it. I thought the animation was fun. The story was fun as well. I like the characters in this. It was silly. There was a few adult jokes in there, which I imagine kids just totally goes over a child's head. But as an adult, you watch and it just makes you laugh. I think early on in the movie there was a few bit of adult humor where I was just like, that was pretty funny. But it is, I thought it was a really fun film, and I was surprised to see how much other content there is for this Puss in Boots character. There's like a Netflix TV show. There's an interactive one on Netflix as well. And also, you go that rabbit hole, you go on Wikipedia, then you go on the internet in general, and you see that Shrek 5 is apparently in the works for about, I think it's 2024, 2025. Um, you know what? I think maybe it's the time now for a Shrek 5, and I think if that new Puss in Boots, it's doing well. That Last Wish, I think it's doing really well at the box office. They probably thought, let's go for a Shrek 5. It's a big property. Get Puss in Boots in there as sort of like an appetizer with this new movie first. Yeah, so Shrek 5 is apparently coming as well. And yeah, if you enjoy these Shrek movies, I'd definitely give this one a whirl. It's one for all the family, I would say. It's a fun movie as well. I think it's just a fun little story. You got this cat, this cat and Humpty Dumpty trying to get these magical beans off Jack and Jill, who I thought Jack and Jill in the nursery rhyme were brother and sister for some reason, but they're actually a married couple. I don't know if maybe that's where I just had it in my head for years. Jack and Jill were brother and sister, but yeah, they're obviously husband and wife in this story, and they're like these big ogreish characters. But yeah, it's a good story, fun story, and one I enjoyed watching. Really, yeah, definitely give Puss in Boots a check out if you've not watched it before. It's got some fun music in there, fun story, fun characters. Well worth giving a go. But anyway, that's what's been on the screen